Space, the final frontier. This is the Observer's Notebook, the official podcast of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. Its mission to explore the solar system, to seek out new observations and data, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now the host of the Observer's Notebook, Tim Robertson.
Hello and welcome to episode 155 of the Observer's Notebook, the official podcast of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. I'm Tim Robertson, the host of the podcast and also the coordinator of the training program within the ALPO. Thanks for downloading and listening. The ALPO collects and analyzes observations of various solar system bodies and associated phenomena, and publishes detailed reports concerning these bodies in its quarterly publication, the Journal of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers, also known as the Strolling Astronomer. This podcast depends upon donations for you, our listeners, to keep it alive. If you enjoy what you're in the podcast, you can donate to it via Patreon, starting at $1 a month. If you feel even more generous, $5, receive early access to the podcast before it goes public. For a monthly donation of $10, you receive a copy of the Novice Observer's Handbook. And for $35, you receive producer credits on the podcast. You can find out more at www.patreon.com/observersnotebook. To join the ALPO, membership begins at $18 a year. You can find us on the internet at www.alpo-astronomy.org. And you can also find us on the Facebook. Just search for ALPO Astronomy. And this podcast also has a Facebook page as well. Just search for Observer's Notebook. And if you enjoy what you hear on the podcast, please subscribe. That way you'll never miss another episode. And now, episode 155 with Bob Lunsford, and we're talking meteor showers. Enjoy. All right, I'd like to welcome everybody back to this edition of the Observer's Notebook podcast, and we're going to talk meteors. We just did it a few weeks ago, but we're talking again. We got some more meteor showers coming up, and that means, of course, Bob Lunsford's coming on. Welcome back to the podcast, Bob.
Thank you, Tim. Of course, it is meteor season. The last quarter of the year is the best time for observers in the northern hemisphere to see these shooting stars, and we are here to discuss the late fall activity, concentrating on the Geminids. Of course, They are usually the highlight of the year,
and they have to happen in the cold month.
Well, and I was going to say, and early in the morning. Well, you can also see the Geminids all night long, but yeah, it's going to be pretty chilly out there. The Geminids have usually been limited to a week or so in mid-December, but we've used video techniques to follow the Geminids now, and we've found out that they actually start in mid-November. And they were actually given another name before we figured out that they were all one the same shower. They were called the Theta Aurigas because they started in November when the radiant is actually in Auriga. Now, that was no big discovery, because at that time they only produced one or two an hour at the very most. So, but it's interesting to follow these meteors, because what we once thought was active only on a few nights are now active for weeks and some of months.
And you said we've discovered this through video?
Yeah. If you have two or more videos that can triangulate, we can determine an orbit for these meteors. And through that, we discovered that the Theta Aurigas were, in fact, have the same source as the Geminids, the asteroid. Okay. What's the name of the asteroid?
Don't ask me.
Yeah, okay. Well, it was the first one that was related to the asteroid. By golly, I'll think of it. Don't worry.
Okay.
But it was the first one associated with any asteroid. Before then, all meteor showers were thought to be produced by comets. So, but the Geminids now can be seen well, like I said, from mid-November all the way almost to Christmas time. So they have a long activity profile, and they peak on the night of December 13th, 14th, when we pass closest to the core of the orbit. Now, unfortunately, on that night, the moon will be a waning gibbous, which is not the best opportunity to view under, because the moon will be really bright. It'll rise about 10 o'clock, and it will obscure a lot of the fainter meteors.
Yeah, and the Geminids are fairly bright, though, aren't they?
Yeah, I was going to get to that point. They are bright, and still, you should be able to see when the Geminid radiant gets high in the sky, which is between midnight and 2 a.m., you still should be able to see with the moon, I would say even 20 an hour, if you're looking away from the moon. And if you go by that 20 an hour, you will be able to see. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. What I was going to say is, at 20 an hour, that is better than 95% of the other nights of the year. So even with the moonlight, I think we made this point during the Perseids, because the Perseids coincided with a full moon.
Right.
That still, even the Perseids or the Geminids, if they coincide with a bright moon, they still produce enough activity to make it worthwhile to go out.
Okay. So what are the characteristics of the shower?
The Geminid meteors, they intersect us on a perpendicular path, which means they're medium velocity.
Okay.
The radiant is very close to the bright star Castor, which rises at sundown and sets very very late in the morning. So in fact, it sets after sundown, sunrise, I should say. So it's basically in the sky all night long.
Okay. So
these meteors can be seen all night long. In fact, with the moon rising at 10 p.m., that might be a great opportunity to see some evening activity. As soon as it gets dark, you may be able to see some Earth grazers from the Geminids, especially on that evening of December 13th, 14th.
Okay, now describe to our audience what you mean by Earth grazer.
Okay, these are meteors that just skim the upper portion of the atmosphere, because we haven't turned toward the source of the meteors yet. The radiant will lie on the horizon, or actually below the horizon. And from that position, they can't penetrate deep into the atmosphere. They can just skim the upper portions. So instead of seeing meteors that are sub-second, these will last sometimes 3, 4, 5 seconds and shoot half or even 75% of the sky. They're very long lasting, and they're very spectacular. Now, a lot of them, if you're facing east, a lot of them will tend to hug either the northern or the southern horizon. But if you get lucky, you may see one shoot high in the sky, and they're really spectacular. I remember observing from Mount near Barstow one year for the Geminids, and just as soon as it got dark, every 5 minutes we were seeing one of these, and it was just fantastic. So this may be a good year to concentrate on them. As the radiant gets higher in the sky later in the evening, the meteors will be able to penetrate deeper into the atmosphere. Therefore, they become shorter, and they will, go back to lasting only a second or even a half a second. So that's the main reason that we don't only see them when the radiant lies close to the horizon.
Okay. All right. Are there any other meteor showers this time of year that you want to chat about?
Well, sure. While you're watching the Geminids, there's also several. One notable one is from the constellation of Puppis. This again produces slow meteors, and believe it or not, I think it was from the constellation of Puppis that I actually heard my only meteor.
Really?
This was during the Geminids shower one year, and we had this meteor shoot up from the southern horizon, go overhead, and it was a fireball, and we were just wowed for that. And a minute later, we heard a sonic boom.
Oh my goodness!
And our jaws dropped even further than they were for the fireball.
Wow. Are there more reports like with a fireball? Is there associated sonic booms usually?
Yes. It doesn't happen very often because those have to penetrate deep into the atmosphere for sound waves to carry.
Sure.
So far less than 1% of all the reports we receive actually involve sound, but it does happen. And when it does happen, and we get a lot of reports of sound, excuse me, that's a good indication that it dropped meteorites.
Okay.
So as I said, I've logged 50,000 meteors in my lifetime.
Oh my goodness!
That was the only one that produced
heard.
any kind of sound for me.
Wow!
So that one puppet meteor shower that only produces 1 or 2 an hour still remains special for me.
That's crazy. That's amazing. You would think it would be the Leonids or something like that, Perseids, but wow, that's wild.
It is wild. Speaking of the Leonids, earlier in the fall season, the Leonids are active, and I wasn't really crazy about discussing them because it coincides with the last quarter moon, which isn't terrible, but the last quarter moon is in November, is located usually really close to the sickle of Leo, and that's where the radiant of the Leonids lies. So I remember the 2000 Leonids, which was between the two storms in 1999 and 2001. Nothing crazy was predicted that year, but still, getting back from Spain and seeing 1,000 an hour.
Wow.
You didn't want to miss it, just something just in case it happened. But the circumstances were very similar then. The last quarter moon was right in the sickle of Leo, and I hardly saw anything. So that was a major disappointment. But actually, there are predictions of slight enhancements this year. So I wouldn't write the Leonids off totally. But for North American observers, on the nights of both November 17th and 18th, I would watch the Leonids, and these normally don't last long. The rates are predicted to increase from a normal of maybe 5 to 10 an hour for the Leonids this year to upwards of maybe even 50 for a very short time. So it's predicted to happen. Most of these never do happen, but I'd like to make our listeners aware of the possibilities. So during the early morning hours of November 17th into the 18th and the 18th into the 19th. It all depends where you're observing from. The East Coast folks can concentrate on the 18th, 19th, whereas us on the West Coast should start watching at midnight on the 17th, 18th, and the 18th and 19th of November.
Okay.
Leo rises shortly before then. So like the Geminids, you may see some Earth grazers. But folks in the East Coast will be better situated. The radiant at that time will be higher in the sky. You don't want to look at the radiant with the moon there, but face toward your darkest location, away from the moon. So I would put the moon at your back, and hopefully there's not a street light in that direction, which tends to be a bummer. So, but there's always a possibility. Just like our little outburst we had the last of May with the Ta Hercules. That was one of the few that actually came through and produced a good display.
Right, that's true.
So the comet that's responsible for the Leonids is heading back toward the inner solar system, but these debris that may show up this year are associated with returns that happened 200-300 years ago. So has nothing to do with the comet approaching the solar system right now. So they're from trails laid down long ago.
That's fascinating.
But still, it's interesting that you're seeing debris that passed the inner solar system, say in 1799, and just so happens that the timing is right, that we pass close to it again 300 years later. So, and it's just something you don't want to pass up, especially if it's clear. You'll never forgive yourself if something happens.
Yeah. Now, we've talked in the past about visual observations of meteor showers, but what if somebody wants to try their hand at photography? And the nice thing is you don't need a telescope, and you really don't need a telephoto lens. You just need a wide field lens, something like that, or probably a standard 50 millimeter lens would be fine.
That's a good one, and I actually have used a 28 millimeter, which offers a little wider field. Mm-hmm. It's not quite as fast as your 50 millimeter, but I like that wide field. Gives you a better chance to nail a meteor. And going back to the Geminids with the bright moon, be a great opportunity for landscape / sky photos. And to have something like a mountain peak and a meteor streaking right above it, with the peak being illuminated by the moon. That's always cool.
And those images you'd welcome too to be submitted to the meteor section.
Certainly.
Just date, time, location, and sky conditions.
You betcha. So even when the moon's out, the Geminids offer a great opportunity for photography.
Oh, great.
The one other thing about the Geminids versus the Leonids encounter the Earth at a head-on position and rarely last more than a second. I mean, they're here and gone in the blink of an eye. Oh. Geminids are slower and bright and very photogenic. So definitely, if you'd like to set up a camera during the Geminids, I would encourage it.
Hey, you really don't need a motor drive for it either. I mean, let's put a camera on a tripod and open the shutter for a few minutes.
Right. Your stars will trail, but you can always tell a meteor because it will cross all those. The star trails are always curved and meteors are always straight. So very easy to tell the difference.
Very cool. Now, go on.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to move. I was just saying, how many active observers do you have in the meteor section?
Well, I would say at the moment it's about a dozen.
Okay.
And a couple of those have just joined after listening to our podcast.
Oh,
so
fantastic!
So we welcome them and be getting regular observation from them. There's one guy I'd like to recognize though, and his name's Robert Hayes. He's been a longtime member of ALPO.
Yes, he has.
And he has been quite prominent in just not the meteor section, but all sections, especially the lunar section. He draws craters and highlights on the moon. And I've seen his work for years in the Strolling Astronomer. And he doesn't own a computer, so I have to write to him. But I wrote to him recently and let him know that he was a major topic during a past ALPO conference. Very cool. So I want him to let him know that his work is really appreciated. but he's been sending data to the Meteor Section for years. And Robert, if you ever listen to one of these podcasts, we all appreciate you, no matter which section you contribute to.
Yeah, I've seen his lunar drawings too in the past, and he's excellent. He's really good. Really
excellent. And to go through the Sterling Astronomers and see some of the sketches that are in there, you got to scratch your head and say, wow, I mean, such talent and such patience. Before I got into photography, I would draw Jupiter, and I look at those now and laugh. My God, what a waste.
Well, I run that training program, and people join it and think it's something they can go through rapidly. And the average student takes about 18 months to get through the program.
Most definitely.
And I scan all the drawings they send me, and when they get near graduation, I'll show them their first few drawings. I'll go, oh my God, it's amazing. It's just your eye to the eyepiece, and the more you observe, the better you see.
You will see more and more detail with each session.
That's right.
And after years of doing it, you'll see something that a newbie will go up and say, "Oh, I don't see that." But yeah, you train yourself to see these minute and low contrast details, and it certainly pays off.
Yeah, it's not a 30-second glance through the eyepiece. You're studying the object you're looking at.
Most definitely. Yeah. And these guys that still submit drawings are amazing, and I applaud them. I've chickened out long ago. I joined the video group, and now I'm taking 3,000 frames of Jupiter and Mars or whatever.
I haven't seen those published. Where are those at?
Oh, actually, the Mars section has a few.
Okay.
To be honest, I see these ones published by guys like Damian Peach and Christopher Go, and I look at mine and I compare mine to theirs, and oh boy, they don't compare.
Those two guys are the reason I don't do imaging. I'll download their images and stare at them, but I won't. I've got all the photo equipment, but it's like, I'd rather have my eye to the eyepiece than a camera.
Their work is so fantastic. I mean, it rivals Hubble when that first arrived on the scene.
Yep.
I mean, so you know what? I have submitted interesting things that I've seen.
Okay.
To Richard and to our guys in the Mars section. In fact, I just submitted a picture of a dust storm on Mars.
Oh, good.
That's going on. That's going on right now.
Yeah.
So. And if I ever get any clear skies here, I'd do it again.
There you go.
But we are at the mercy of the weather. So
that's true. Well, Bob, this has been good. You have anything else you'd like to add before we shut
down?
Yeah,
I'd like to add that 2022 has been kind of a challenge. The moon has not cooperated, and certainly the weather has been a challenge for a lot of folks. But 2023, at least for meteor observers, is going to be sweet, because only 2 showers, the Quadranids and the 8 Aquarids, are mooned. The rest of them are going to be peaking during the new moon. So I look forward to observing and discussing them in 2023.
Sounds like a plan. Well, Bob, again, it's always been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
My pleasure, and clear skies to everyone.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Observer's Notebook podcast. I again want to thank Bob Lunsford for coming on and talking about meteor showers. Get out there and observe the meteor showers. They're a lot of fun. We upload a new episode of the Observer's Notebook on the 1st and 15th of every month. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. If you do, please rate and review us. I really, really do appreciate it. And you can also listen to us on Apple Radio, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Google Play, Stitcher, Amazon Echo, Spotify, and also on the ALPO YouTube page. You can help support the podcast by donating to it via Patreon by giving up to $35 a month, where you receive 1 year's membership to the ALPO and producer credits on the podcast. And with that, I want to thank the producers of this podcast, Steve Siedentop and Michael Moyer, for their generous support. The link for Tron, as well as the link for the ALPO, is in the show notes. If you'd like to get a hold of me, my email address is commentman@commentman.net, or you can get me on Twitter at ObserversNBPod. Until next time, my hope is you always have clear and steady skies. Thanks for listening.